Tonight, we welcome the next generation of engaged, resplendent and sharp-witted political personalities. The vivid, feathery plumage that sprouts from the withered, husky torsal stumps of the New Zealand body politic. Let's welcome to the stage our beloved youth wingers, starting with Jazz McIntosh, the chairperson of Southern Young Labour. Not only did she recently deliver to Parliament a petition seeking accessible neurodiversity assessments, but she's pretty handy at juggling reusable coffee cups. For the second time in 2 campaigns, we have co-wing representatives for the Greens, and for the second time they are, I kid you not, a romantic couple. Welcome Lily Chen and Ryan Blackmore, co-conveners of the University of Auckland Greens. Lily and Ryan met on the Green Party's answer to Bumble, a Young Greens AGM on Zoom. Welcome. Please welcome to the stage Ollie Murphy, the president of Young Act. Like Roger Douglas before him, Ollie emerged rebellious from a lefty home to conquer the world. Ollie is 28th on the list for the ACT Party at this upcoming election, meaning he'll be in Parliament if ACT wins a mere 21% of the vote. Haere mai, Ollie. More representation from the mighty city of Ōtepoti with Keegan Langeveld, the chairperson for Young New Zealand First and the party's candidate for Dunedin. Keegan is an Otago graduate, lives in the Spates House just off Castle Street and was born more than 2 decades after Winston Peters first entered Parliament. Keegan, welcome. Finally, a very warm welcome to Dallas Kete, Northern Young Nats Regional Chair and an advisor to Hamilton West MP Tama Potaka, not PM yet.
We'll take PM though.
Dallas first went door knocking for the National Party in the 1999 campaign when she was 4 weeks old. Kia ora, Dallas. All right, should we get into it? I want you guys to imagine that you have before you an audience full of first-time voters. Many of them undecided, many of them not sure whether they actually want to vote at all. You've got 30 seconds, and we're going to police this quite ruthlessly, 30 seconds to give your pitch, to explain why your party and why now. Jazz, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for being here today. Being a first-time voter can be really overwhelming, but it is also really exciting. You get a chance to have a direct say in your future. The Labour Party is building a positive future while also addressing what matters to New Zealanders in the here and now. Things are difficult, but numbers are showing we are moving in the right direction. We need to keep the momentum with a vote for Labour. We are in it for you.
Thank you, Jazz. Lily, you going to take this one for the Greens?
I will. Kia ora te whānau. The Green Party prioritises the people and the planet. We are committed to tackling the climate crisis alongside addressing the underlying causes of structural injustice. The time is now for bold action, and our vision involves an Aotearoa where everyone has enough to live a life of dignity. A green government will protect our communities of today and provide for the communities of tomorrow.
Thank you very much, Lily. Ollie, tell us why to vote for ACT.
You know, I've spoken to a lot of young people in this campaign so far, and the key issues that they've raised with me is they're concerned about the cost of living, they're concerned about crime, and they're really concerned about their future prospects. You know, like me, they want a good education and a well-paying job. They want to be able to own a home and be treated fairly by the government. I joined ACT because I believe they had the policies to achieve a brighter future. You know, a party vote for ACT is a vote for real change, not just for the bureaucrats in Wellington, but for you.
Thank you, Ollie. Keegan, tell us the New Zealand First story.
So New Zealand First has spent the last 30 years working for our most vulnerable New Zealanders, seniors and our young people. We can continue that work when we return to Parliament. We're facing a change in government, all polls are showing that. And the other 2 parties on the opposition are extremely inexperienced. We need experience and certainty in this crisis, and New Zealand First can provide that.
And Dallas, National Party.
Your choice this year is simple. 3 more years of a coalition of chaos or a strong national government. Let's face it, being a young Kiwi at the moment is hard, The last 3 years, all we have had is broken promises delivered. Under a strong national government, we will tackle the cost of living crisis. We will ensure that strong mental health services and outcomes are provided, and we will ensure a prosperous future for all young Kiwis. On October the 14th, go and 2 ticks blue.
Right on the bell. Great job, everybody. Well expressed. Let's go with a show of hands to get things kicking off properly. Can I ask you, please, to raise your hand if it is your ambition to one day become a Member of Parliament?
Aren't you on the list?
I'm on the list. Isn't it?
It's especially interesting because there are 2 people on the stage who, I don't know if you understand the implications, but you are standing for Parliament. Can you explain, Keegan?
New Zealand First's mission has always been party vote, and I'm sticking to that mission, and I don't really want to be an MP. They seem like they've got a bit of a tough gig.
Really?
And I've got a life to live, so they can have all that stress, and I'll go enjoy my life.
And you too, Ollie, really?
Yeah, as Keegan said, party vote campaign. I put my name on the list.
One day?
Well, you know, I think being an MP, being in politics is a bit like going out in the rain and cleaning the gutter. It's not something anyone particularly wants to do, but it needs to be done.
Okay. Jazz, what do you think, or you personally, or even just being on a stage, don't we want young people to want to go into Parliament?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, full disclosure, I'm not completely ruling it out just in case it comes out in a few years' time or something. Personally, I'm someone who's behind the scenes, but we need more youth engagement in politics, and so there are people for that, but I'm probably not the best.
All right, well, I'm not going to hold any of you to it, because I hope you do all get into Parliament one day, and we want people to want to get into Parliament, don't we? Hey, Dallas, tell us about the 2 main parties. A lot of people suggest that they've converged so much that it makes sense that both leaders are called Chris. What is it that makes a difference with National from the Labour alternative?
For me, I feel that National has everyone's futures in mind. You know, we've got tight fiscal management. We have a strong team that has future ambition in mind. We don't put red tape all over everything and make it hard for people to make something of themselves and to make something bigger for themselves.
What about you, Jazz? I mean, especially now that Chris Hipkins has ruled out wealth tax, ruled out capital gains tax. What is it that makes the Labour Party different from the National Party?
I mean, the reason I'm involved is it addresses inequality. So there is ways that you can address inequality, and one of them is through taxes, but there is a whole lot of other ways you can do that. I don't believe that the National Party want to address it or even mention inequality, but it is something that is really real in New Zealand and it needs to be tackled. And so, yeah, the Labour is the one to be able to do that.
Ollie, our ACT is a proudly radical party. It says what it thinks, it wants big change. But this isn't a time for that, is it? This is a time in a cost of living crisis, a time for stability, not a time to run around, you know, shaking the trees.
Actually, I think this is the perfect time for radical, real change. I think what we've seen from Labour for the past 6 years, even John Key before that, is that the status quo just isn't working. We need to actually have a fundamental change to our public services who are treating your money like it's nothing. You know, we had $40,000 spent on a goodbye party for some CEO who didn't even leave the public service. He just went to another ministry. I think when the public service has a mindset like that, it absolutely needs to change.
Is that why your party leader threatened to bomb a certain ministry?
Look, clearly that was a joke. You know, if that's not up your alley, then, you know, that's you.
Was that a funny joke?
I think it was pretty funny. I think, you know, jokes are subjective.
Anyone that threatens a minority is not a funny joke.
It was not a threatening a minority. That was just absolutely untrue.
Did you read it?
All right, let's leave Guy Fawkes to one side for now. That's enough history. Keegan, your party leaders have in recent times been sending out some messages that seem to be attracting some interesting supporters, among them anti-vaxxers, the fringe right, and opponents of trans rights. Do you want your party to be a sanctuary for people like that?
Our party always welcomes everyone. Our whole mission statement is to bring more extremist views down to the centre. And frankly, when people get involved in our party, that's what we see happen. I'm quite proud that we have had a strong centrist history. We bring all ranges of opinions in, and we get to the real heart of the issues rather than focusing on the extreme lefts or the extreme rights.
You don't think there's a certain amount of cynicism in some of the electioneering that's been going on?
Well, I think there's always going to be cynicism in electioneering. It's electioneering. People thrive off division. Political parties make their bread and butter off division, whether it's positive division or negative division. That's just the case.
If you're a centrist party, why have you ruled out working with Labour?
It was pretty simple.
And if you're welcoming to everyone, then how many trans people do you know in the New Zealand First Party?
Well, I don't know all of our membership off the top of my head. I'm not an encyclopedia. But we ruled out working with Labour because they lied to our leadership. And if you can't trust someone, you can't work with them. It's that simple.
So, Ryan, speaking of ruling out, ruling in, all that sort of thing, if you were approached by a national voter, national through and through, every part of them believed in the National Manifesto, except they thought that they should be stronger on climate change, would you welcome them into the Green Party?
Fundamentally, the Greens and National have very different approaches to politics. And this comes to our different value sets. But ultimately, if there are people out there, and a lot of people do care about stopping the climate crisis and taking that action, then we will work together on policy. And we have tried to be as bipartisan as possible. You saw that with the Zero Carbon Act. You saw that in our time when we were in Parliament with New Zealand First, Labour, and us. But when we try to do this, we're always getting backlash. We're always getting bad faith uses of our time by the other parties. You look at something like cannabis legislation, right? Something that we've tried to cross the aisle and work with ACT on. They refuse, even though we were about 30,000 votes from legalizing cannabis this country in the last election.
Don't blame that on us.
But you haven't done anything since on that legislation, have you?
But
you haven't worked towards that.
Maybe Lily, you can take this one. Do you think that if there were to be a national-led government at the next election, would you like to see the Green try and find ways of achieving, say, a memorandum of understanding, which has been done before? Should there be an effort to reach some kind of deal?
I mean, I'm open to that proposition, but I believe the probability of us actually having a constructive working relationship with National is about as likely as Marine Pugh getting struck by lightning for the 4th term.
That's pretty likely.
The track record is bad on it.
I believe they've actually had grounding put in the House, so no more lightning strikes at the House, apparently. But I mean, if we're going to talk about that, we heard and we were reminded last week that Todd Muller did work with James Shaw and that they had a very good relationship when it came to environmental issues.
That's great, but why are you building more roads when we fundamentally need to be shifting our modes of transport to lower carbon forms, like high-speed rail between our cities?
Well, if Labour would have actually got light rail underway, we could be talking about rail, but we've seen that light rail was a disaster. It's got nothing started in 6 years.
Fundamentally, light rail is still a good idea, and the idea of Labour at the moment of tunnelling underneath is going to cost more. Under the Greens' current transport plan, we would see light rail implemented not just in Auckland, but in Wellington and Christchurch.
Well, why didn't you try and get it across in the last 6 years while working with Labour?
We haven't actually been in government the last 6 years, been in government between 2017 and 2020.
Doesn't your party have 2 ministers?
We have 2 ministers, but they're outside of cabinet, and if you understand politics, you'd know that that doesn't give them any actual whipping power.
So you can't work with Labour either then?
Let's do a little bit more history. Why not? A little bit more political history. Can you please raise your hand if you think that Nelson Mandela would have voted for your party? We've got one very tentative hand from Jan. The Greens.
I don't think we know what he would have voted for.
Jess, you sort of maybe. You're a maybe.
I'm a maybe. I mean, yeah, who knows who he would have voted for, but I think our values align similar.
I couldn't help notice, Ollie, from Young ACT, that your hand didn't go up then.
Look, I think...
What is it about ACT that you think Nelson Mandela wouldn't have voted for?
It's not about. I think in terms of his values of universal humanitarianism do align. Whether he would vote for ACT specifically, no one can say.
Well,
again,
I know one guy who
Seymour.
did. David Seymour said that Nelson Mandela would vote.
Another great joke.
A joke!
Do you think David was wrong, or...?
Yes, I've got to say I'm very excited about the David Seymour history curriculum under the next government. Dallas, the ACT Party is demanding a referendum on the treaty. How do you feel about that idea?
When we're out door knocking every day doing the phone calls, not once have we ever had someone, and this is just, I mean, me personally, I've not once ever had someone say to me, my biggest issue is a referendum on the treaty. What people are saying is that combating the cost of living, getting their children into school, making sure that there's adequate mental health services, those are the top priorities for everyday New Zealanders that I'm engaging with.
Actually, New Zealanders are actually seriously concerned about co-governance, and it's not a referendum on the treaty itself. It's a referendum on how we apply those principles to our laws.
Is this another scare tactic?
Absolutely not. It's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous that you're constantly dog whistling rather than addressing, actual fundamental issues, rather than engaging with recommendations of the Matiki Mai report.
What the treaty...
Okay, let's put it this way. Say you're a lawyer, you enter into a contract. It's fundamental rule that it should favour the non-drafting party, right? The Crown drafted it, therefore it should favour Māori, therefore we should be adopting the Māori text Te Tiriti o Waitangi. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely, and that's why we need a referendum on this, because everyone's trying to interpret this differently.
So you agree that we should be adopting Te Tiriti o Waitangi?
Absolutely, because what the treaty outlines is that the government has the right to govern. That's kawangatanga, private property rights, which allow people to live and use their property how they wish. That's rangatiratanga, and equal rights regardless of their ancestry or identity.
I think that's a limited understanding of
That's exactly what the treaty says. It outlines these principles. I think it's a perfect foundation for a multi-ethnic, liberal democracy that we live in. I think that's New Zealand people want to live in, where everyone is treated equally regardless of their ancestry.
Keegan.
But we haven't treated
New Zealand
people
First,
equally in this
Keegan loves a
country.
referendum.
We've dispossessed them of their land and stolen
and that needs to be fixed.
Okay, very good.
We agree on that.
Are you on for a referendum on interpretations of the treaty?
New Zealand First stands for referendums for conscious issues that are going before Parliament. This isn't an issue that's before Parliament, a specific referendum on the treaty, so we don't have a specific
it kind
policy.
of is, because we see with co-governance they're using what they believe are the principles of the treaty to push this on us. And that's why we need a referendum.
We've already had working co-governance systems in this country for about a decade. So why are you kicking up a fuss now?
Because there's a big difference between how, for example, the Waikato River is managed and how we manage the pipes under our feet.
Okay, let's crack on. Let's talk a bit more about cost of living. It's the issue that is top of mind for most New Zealanders when we look at the surveys. It's also an issue that matters, Keegan, isn't it, to young people? Is it the issue when you go around and talk to people your age that is top of mind, and what can a government do to address it?
Yes, it is an issue that a lot of young people that I speak to are concerned about. Sometimes it's not always the top issue. People I talk to in a university town tend to focus on student-specific cost of living rather than the general cost. But a government can tackle it by ensuring that we've got a strong and independent energy and fuel sector in New Zealand. That's where a lot of costs kind of have their inflationary origins. And New Zealand First wants to establish a Ministry for Energy and outline a fuel security plan that would make sure we keep strategic production assets in New Zealand so that we can counter international events like we're seeing now, like the war in Ukraine that's caused fuel shortages and food shortages. So if New Zealand's got an independent energy and fuel sector, I think we'll see cost of living go down. You
talk about energy security, the war in Ukraine and all those different international effects. Isn't that the case, really, Dallas, that this is an international issue, and to blame it on the incumbent government is a bit rich when you can't really change, the weather, the global weather?
It is all well and good to say that it's what's happening around us, it's Ukraine, it's this, that and the other. But there are factors, such as the government's policies, that are affecting it at a local level. And if you look at national stance on the economy. We have tight fiscal management, and that's why we are fit to govern, especially in times like this.
But are tax cuts the way to go that are often talked as more inflationary than government spending?
We're not just focusing on tax cuts, and what tax cuts we do have are going to be tailored to those in the squeezed middle.
What do you think, though, Jazz, I mean, in terms of the contribution of the Labour government to the cost of living crisis? It's got to take some responsibility, right?
Look, I think it's a very difficult time at the moment. Like, it's very hard for New Zealanders. A student myself, I have seen the costs rising for rent, for groceries, and it is really difficult, but I'm also really proud that the stance Labour has taken. You know, we got ourselves through the COVID pandemic, and I'm extremely proud of how we managed that. Going through now, things like that we can do for everyday New Zealanders. So, you know, taking GST off fruits and vegetables, making that more affordable.
But that doesn't get back to the everyday Kiwi. The people that are impacted the most by that are the supermarket owners.
No, but the thing is we've brought in grocery regulators, and so bringing in more
competition. Who have done nothing so far.
More red tape and regulation is only hindering our economy from achieving what it could actually achieve. The reality of the last 12 months under Labour is that food is up 12%, transports are up 14%, rent is up $20 per week.
Going back to the groceries.
Because of wasteful spending, which drives up inflation and lowers what's in our wallets.
Is wasteful spending counted as abolishing the Ministry for Women, the Ministry for Māori, the Ministry for Pacifica? Are those wasteful?
Yes, because they don't actually achieve anything for those groups. I'm talking about things like $500 million on unused rapid antigen tests that are now sitting in a warehouse at a cost of $10,000 a day to the taxpayer. That is what's happening under Labour.
Isn't, Ollie, though, the ACT prescription to remove the safety net, to repeat the experiments that were seen in the 80s and leave a whole lot of people struggling as a result?
No, absolutely not. I think there are changes that need to be made to our welfare system. Our policies will be coming out about that in the next few weeks. But what really needs to happen is we need to look at how government is spending our money. Because what we've seen is this huge amount of wasteful spending without any effort to actually reduce that. We saw the other day Labour made an attempt to say, oh, we'll rein it back in. But all they really did was cut money they hadn't spent already and then cut money for future budgets. That's not real change.
We're
That's not bringing down
future.
Wasteful spending. That's not returning money back into your pockets.
You know, the average household is paying $22,000 more in taxes a year, but does the average household feel like they're getting $22,000 worth of services from their government? Do you feel like you're getting that from your public servants?
Depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to low to middle income earners, yes, absolutely.
But what do they get it?
If you talk to Labour supporters,
no
think
charge
our
on
public
prescriptions.
Services got worse.
Lily, I'd like to hear from you on this. The green solution to the cost of living crisis involves ramping up tax and ramping up spending, right? Is that a responsible course of action when everyone is so pinched?
Absolutely. If you look at the international sphere, New Zealand is one of the only jurisdictions in the developed world where there's no tax for reducing inequities. In fact, that's why we're considered a tax haven. There are no taxes for churches and charities, for example. So what the Green Party is proposing is rewriting the tax rules to supply an income guarantee of $385 weekly, and the first $10,000 you earn is entirely tax-free, thus offering a tax cut of 95% of all New Zealanders. We also have a place to renters to ensure there are rent caps. We also have universal dental care. All these missions and policies that we have implemented ensures that we can wrap around support for those who are earning less and ensures that they are paying less when you're on the lowest income, whereas those who can afford to contribute more are paying more to fund these initiatives.
Okay, terrific. I think we've solved the cost of living crisis between us. Let's move on. Let's do another show of hands. Hand in the air, please, if you think that the voting age for general elections should be lowered to 16. A question for the three of you who don't think that. Does any of you think it should go up, just before I go on? 20, 21, back up there? No. Given that voting is this sort of sacred right, really, and that we shouldn't withdraw it unless there's a very compelling reason, how is it that we can withhold suffrage from somebody who can enrol in the army, who can consent to sex, who can go out and work and pay tax, who can have a firearms licence? Do you want to answer that, each of you, please, quickly? Dallas.
Well, I mean, sorry.
Oh, no, you can go, Ollie.
Okay, fine. Well, you talk about all those things, the responsibilities that young people have, and as they get older, those responsibilities increase. And when they're 18, they're considered an adult. They are fully accountable to the policies that they vote for. They're fully accountable to the laws that get implemented because of their voting. If you're under 18, you are not fully accountable to what you vote for. That's why it should be 18. And what we've seen from just what this government's trying to push through at the moment through Parliament is for local governments, is that this is going to put a huge burden on local governments who are already stretching their budget. Ultimately, this will have to come at the cost of better infrastructure, better public transport, and better climate adaptation.
So democracy isn't worth the cost? Is that what you're saying?
We could save a whole lot of money if we made the voting age just everyone between 30 and 35.
Creating those voting patterns early in people's lives. There's clear studies that show that when people start voting early, they're more likely to continue voting. We need to be increasing and making sure that student voices, young people's voices are heard. Otherwise, they're never going to have a say in how this country is actually run.
Okay, do you want to come back on that, Keegan? Keegan? Thank you.
So the Office of the UN Commissioner on Human Rights says that democracy is based on the will of the people. So it's Young New Zealand First's view that if we're going to look at any electoral changes, regardless of what they are, that it should be put to referendum, and if you believe your campaign is so strong and that your people are so engaged in politics, they should be able to get out there and prove it to the New Zealand public. If they can't prove it, then I think that all the criticisms of political apathy amongst the youth are very valid, and it's just a very loud minority that are saying me, me, me.
Will 16-year-olds be able to vote in your referendum?
That would require electoral change, so no.
We'll have a referendum to decide whether or not 16-year-olds can vote in the referendum.
They should be able to make their case if they're so confident in the cause.
Dallas, a word from you. You've been informed about politics for a long time. I'm sure you would have cast an informed vote at the age of 16.
I mean, the party's stance is pretty much that we have bigger fish to fry at the moment. In terms of me putting an informed vote in when I was younger, I don't necessarily know if I would have. What my vote would have been formed on was for people around me, that being, my mum, my dad, everyone around me who was a national voter. So whether or not it was fully my own view, that would be really hard to judge.
When I was 16, I probably would have voted for Labour, so if that's a reason enough not to have it at 16, I think that's pretty good.
Just of those of you who said it should be lowered to 16, is there anyone who thinks it should go lower than that?
Oh, why not?
I mean,
we have a Gillett competence test. Anyone who is capable of making informed decisions should be able to do that on a democratic level. Yeah.
So what, 14?
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, we could phase it in parts if you really wanted to, but that's just my personal opinion.
Okay, and last thing on age. Can you raise your hand if you think there should be a maximum age for voting? I don't know, 80 or something like that.
Yeah, well, that rule
whatever Winston
out.
Peters' age is.
No, nobody brave enough to put their hand up there. Very good, very good. Okay, who thinks that in Aotearoa, an important solution for dealing with the law and order problem is introducing boot camps?
Policy. You better put your hand up.
This is like when someone accidentally bids at an auction and then they find they've bought $1 million house.
What I'll say to those is that I think the narrative that's been set around boot camps isn't fair. They are not military-style hardcore boot camps. They are
exactly what they've been described.
They are
writing.
They are services that are going to offer wraparound services from local providers to our young offenders. They are giving them a pathway once they come out of these camps to rehabilitate themselves with wraparound support with local people who know them best in their communities. It's giving young people a second chance. People say it's not founded, but last time we had these initiatives, there was a 57% success rate. Isn't 57%?
The last time we had these initiatives, people are abused in state care.
And that's why National is taking a stronger stance on it this time.
I was a bit surprised, Keegan, that you went into boot camps.
So our party has had boot camp policy in the past. It's not currently a 2023 commitment.
Yeah, what do you think?
I am kind of in the middle on this one, I'll be honest. I can see the good, but I can also see the negative. I understand that historically there was abuse in those systems, and there still is abuse in a lot of state care systems, but I do see the value of what Dallas was saying about how there was a reduction in crime last time around. Surely we can find a balance between that kind of gets rid of the bad and upplays the good aspects that we had under the previous systems.
What about you, Jazz? What do you think in terms of the rhetoric around crime, around law and order?
Look, at a conference last year, Chris Hipkins spoke, and there was a question raised around being tough on crime, and he said, being tough on the causes of crime is being tough on crime. We can't just get to this end point where people are already committing offences and say, oh no, we'll put you in a boot camp and hope that solves it. People are going to go back to those same communities that force them into crime in the first place.
And that's why National's approach is multifaceted. It's not just for boot camps. All the left have chosen to acknowledge is for boot camps, but it is a multifaceted approach that looks at the root causes and looks at the way we can reduce these. But this narrative doesn't get talked about,
it's tricky,
does it?
But it does get talked about on the doorstep, doesn't it, Dallas? Dallas, hang on a second. When you go out on the doorstep, people do bring up boot camps, don't they? People
They do.
want them, yeah. And what do you say to them?
The first thing I say is, let's get it clear. It is not this hard-out military-style boot camp you think it is. It's actually more about giving young people that second chance after a serious offence and rehabilitating them into society.
But they still have to go through the boot camp and the trauma before they do that.
We're making sure that there are safeguards in place so that does not happen.
Ollie,
what
safeguards?
The truth is that this government has actually failed to keep Kiwis safe. They promised in 2017 they're going to reduce the prison population by 30%. It's actually one of the few things they actually achieved. In fact, they went over and beyond. They achieved 45% prison reduction. But they did this.
And look at all the serious offending around you.
Total
How many
negligence.
prisons are you going to build with your tough on crime rhetoric?
They did this through total negligence and a failure to protect victims and the well-being of those who are being released.
We brought 1,800 more
by
police
letting them out
on the
early
front lines.
without being able to read, being able to write, or being able to have a driver's license or a trade has only set them up for failure and re-offending. We need to address crime that is currently happening in our streets higher than almost ever. ACT would increase the prison capacity, so as well as focus on rehabilitation services once they're in those prisons, so they actually, once they're out of it, they're not forced back into crime. They can actually go get a job to support themselves and their family.
Can I just say that putting people in prison isn't the answer? This tough on crime bullshit, sorry.
When you have murderers in the streets who have ankle bracelets on still committing crime, that is a failure to protect victims.
In my controversial opinion, which is backed by sociological studies and is evidence-based, crime is a social phenomenon. In simpler terms, crime does not insist...
So do you want to say that to the victims, Ben?
Yes,
I
it
think-
is a
Go on,
social...
say it to the victims. Go on.
Absolutely a social
Say it
issue.
to the victims.
This means we're the only party that introduced the first national strategy to eliminate sexual violence, Tiara Kura, which is a
hell's that
25-year-old plan. It's going great, thank you for asking. And what it does...
What are the stats on it?
Is it...
What are the stats?
In 2022, it was found that out of 63 red rate incidents, 95% of offenders were linked to family violence event. And Tiara Kura provides that holistic framework in envisioning crime as existing within an ecosystem that is shaped by colonialism, shaped by capitalism.
So in summary, they've looked at the numbers, but they haven't actually
Fundamentally, we
achieved
need
anyone.
a new approach. We need a new approach. Look, this idea that tough on crime is working is a complete lie. Prison isn't a deterrent. If these deterrent measures had worked, then crime would have gone away with the invention of the guillotine. It's as simple as that.
prison isn't meant to be a deterrent, it's meant to be a place where people can get rehabilitated. That's ACT's policy.
Then why wouldn't you bring that rehabilitation back into the community where they can be supported by their friends and whānau? Why would you take them away from their community so they feel disconnected and isolated and put them with a whole group of other people who have experienced doing crime?
So for those people that are seriously offended,
for failure.
The truth is that you can have both. You can have both community stuff for people who might not be as violent as others. There are people who are committing horrific crimes who are now out in the streets committing more crimes. That's what's happening under this government. It needs to stop.
Okay, last word from you, Dallas, on this, and then Jazz, and then we'll move on.
So on that, what happens to the victims? The serious offenders are out on the streets, they're walking around. What happens to their victims? Are they meant to just live in fear? What do you do for them?
I'm not sure where you're getting this understanding that as soon as someone commits a crime that they're out on the streets walking around like nothing's happened.
But this is what the Greens know.
This is
what the Greens
That
want.
is clearly not what we're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Good, thank you all for that. We're getting towards the twilight of this debate. One of the best things about youth wings, I'm sure you agree, is that they're not facsimiles of the mothership. They're not the same as the big party. They nudge and sometimes kick and scream and generally draw the larger party towards the light. That's one of the really powerful positive impacts of the youth wings. And so what I want to ask you is, what is the one issue, the one area, the one change that you would like to make to your party's manifesto? And don't worry, they will still love you. What is the one change that you would like to make for this election? And I'm going to throw that one to you first, Dallas.
One of the things that I've been really passionate about and been pushing for since 2019 is Nikki Kay's initiative of lifelong learners accounts, which is based off a model used in Singapore. Roughly the closest equivalent would be something like KiwiSaver, where money is put in, it's earning interest, and then when your children or grandchildren, depending on how you want to spend it, or any other relatives, are ready to go to tertiary education, get into a trade or anything like that, the money is available.
Policy, right?
Not quite. But yeah, the money is there so that their education is secure and everyone has access to being able to further themselves.
Thank you. Keegan.
Myself, leading Young New Zealand First, we've championed a lot of student loan reform remits within our party. I'd like to see those adopted as party policy, things like removing mandatory repayments in the first 3 years post-study if you're earning under median wage and stay in New Zealand. A more robust universal student allowance policy that promotes keeping graduates in New Zealand and contributing to our critical work areas that are lacking.
All right. Ollie, what are you going to change in the ACT manifesto?
You know, I think the ACT Party covers pretty well crime, cost of living. I think that's already pretty well covered. But something that could actually address both of that is maybe a bit more of a liberal approach to drug reform.
That's been a young ACT thing for a while, eh?
Yes, it has.
Everything? How far are you going? Legalise everything?
Look, we'll leave that up to the experts. You know, we're just a bunch of young people, but, but it needs to change.
What's the line you're going to change in the Green manifesto?
One thing that is in the fine print of our manifesto is working towards cancelling student debt. I think we should try to work towards actually fully erasing student debt. We should make all tertiary education free and accessible for all and expand that to the trades as well. I think that students at the moment are struggling and that the Green Party is the only party that is actually going to manifestly improve our lives.
Thank you, Ryan. And Jazz, what are you going to change with the having? Is it about tax?
No.
This is. Come on.
No. Okay. This is a little bit of a shameless plug, and a little bit of a specific one. That neurodiversity, having that more supported, more diagnosis, having support in the education system and the health system is my personal view on that.
Okay. Thank you. What about a capital gains tax?
Young Labour has never been opposed to it. We've always pushed for it, and that will never change.
All right, thank you. Thank you all, that's enough. We're done, we have to get out of here. Thank you to our Youth Wing participants. Heroes all. Here's to constructive, spirited and good-humoured debate in the weeks to come. Ka kite anō.
Mm-hmm.